All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, folks. Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. I think I know just about everyone in the room and on Zoom, but just in case you don't know me, my name is Pat Finnerty. I've worked with what is now the Open Network for a long time. I had the privilege of working with Mike Monopoly at CareQuest for a long time as well, and I'm going to be facilitating a good portion of the meeting today. First of all, it's just great to be here with you all. It really is. Yes. You can't hear. Well, I can, but then I go out of, I was just going to, how about this? He's turning up the volume, Jan. See if that's going to work. Is this better? Wait a minute, hold on. Is this better? I'll just hold it up here. Yeah, and since you asked, Jan, I'll get to the reason why I'm sitting down. I generally don't do that, but we're in a situation today where we have several folks on Zoom, and we do not want to be disrespectful to them. We want them to see us as best we can, and that's why I'm sitting rather than standing. But if any time I lose sight of holding this up, holler again, okay? Because I obviously want to make sure you hear everything. She's right near a speaker, so I think that's probably the best place, really.
I'm near a speaker.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll settle down.
Can I drop this mic now? Is that okay?
See what you get yourself into.
Yeah, you just started it, Gail. Now everybody else is going. But because of the Zoom situation, that's why we're all going to be sitting and staying in one place so that we are on camera. And we've arranged the tables, even though there are more tables here and folks could get spread out. Again, we're trying to get people to sit at 2 or 3 tables so the folks on Zoom can see us. So, a couple of housekeeping things in relation to that. One is I've just discovered again that I still have not found a pair of readers that I can use with a mask and I don't get all fogged up, but I'm going to give this set a try. First of all, there's a microphone at each table. Please use that microphone so that everyone can hear you, particularly those who are on Zoom. If you did not see the restrooms, you can go out this door here where everyone came in and turn right. The women's room will be right in front of you. For the men, you go in the same direction, but once you get close to the women's room, turn to the left, and they're there. I assume you folks on Zoom don't need directions to your necessary rooms. If you do, I can't help you. So, first of all, again, it's great to be with you all today. And we have a full agenda. And I want to take a very quick detour and actually go to the end of the agenda, because you don't need to go to the end of the agenda, but I want to go there because when we close out today, we're gonna ask each of you, based on your work with the NOHCT and the proceedings today, about what each of you can do. What we want you to share one commitment that you would be willing to make to the NOHCT or the network. One commitment that you're willing to do for the NOHCT or for the network. And the reason I say that now is because I want to start with mine. And my commitment to you all is to try my very best to make everyone here feel like an equal part of this group and this proceeding. And it may be a bit of a stretch for me to say that part of my commitment is this, but I do want to say it. Part of my commitment is to try to make you feel comfortable too. That this is a place where we can have an open exchange with everyone. And again, be comfortable with where we're at and the issues that we're talking about. I think there are a couple of NOHCT members behind me, and I apologize for you all looking at my, I'm trying to think of the most appropriate term, looking from behind, thank you. But there are a couple of seats here if you want to be in front. It's just that, again, we're trying to be respectful to the folks on Zoom. After, okay, they're going to move up after they eat, so that'll be good. Then we'll all be together. So let me go to the first slide here and give you a little bit of a roadmap of where we're heading. These are our desired outcomes for today. These you have seen. The first one is strengthening connections and shared commitments across the NOHCT. The second one is a shared awareness of approaches to respecting and advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion through governance of open, and Francis is going to be leading us in that discussion. The third one is a shared agreement around how the NOHCT can hold the center while leading from the side. Don Weaver is going to talk to us about that. A shared agreement on how the NOHCT will support the network for 2022, including specific strategies, tactics, and responsibilities. Francis is going to be handling that for us. And then I will be going through the section on a shared understanding of roles that all NOHCT members can play. No, excuse me, I dropped one there. A shared understanding of roles that all NOHCT members can play to support the open fundraising strategy. Someone from STARS is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be Aaron or Ellie. Is one of them in the group here?
Yeah. So they're going to be
joining
joining
us
online. They're going to be joining us a little later on Zoom.
Okay. They're going to be on Zoom. Okay, great. Thank you. And a shared agreement on implementing the communications and member engagement proposal, and that's going to be me. That's going to be towards the end of our day. So, a quick question: does everyone else in the room know each other? I know we have several new members, or relatively new, but I don't know if if you all have been together and know each other. Do we need to do just a name and where you're from? I'm seeing a bunch of yeses. Okay. So I will start with Francis. Just go around the room real quick. Just your name and who you're representing or who you work for, because we really don't have time for a long, career kind of stuff. Yes.
I hate to do this, but Manisha, who probably needs.
Oh, she's not here. Okay.
Just stepped out.
All right. Okay. So, well,
Sorry about that.
no, that's okay. Right on target. Now we can do it.
And there'll be a quiz.
Manisha, we're going to do a quick around the room with just a name and who folks work for. Not career stuff or anything, just your name and who you work for. And I'm going to start on my left and go around this way, and then I'll move over to one of the other tables. Francis, you're up.
Cool. Well, as Pat mentioned, my name is Francis. If anyone does not know me, I'm coming from Long Beach, California, and I represent Encompass Solutions as the backbone for Open, and hopefully that's not too confusing.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Julie Seward. I work for the Southern Plains Tribal Health Board, which is based in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but just recently relocated to Tulsa. So, and I'm also new to the NOHCT, so I'm one of the newbies here.
Thank you.
I'm Ife Johnson, Executive Director with Encompass. I'm from Detroit.
Thank you, Ife. Can everybody hear us on Zoom okay?
Yes, it's great. Great audio.
Good? Okay, great. Okay, good.
Hi, Christy King, Southeast Michigan Senior Regional Collaborative in Detroit. And Mike Monopoly with CareQuest Institute in Boston.
All right, why don't we go to this table? Manisha, why don't you go?
Yes, Monisha Richard Washington. Just launched my own business called The Link Consulting in Minnesota.
Christine Wood, Reno, Nevada, Association of State and Territorial Dental Directors.
Paul Glassman from California. One of my jobs is at California North State University in Sacramento.
Jan Grutzius, Phoenix, Arizona. I'm on the NOHCT in communications and member engagement.
Don Weaver, National Association of Community Health Centers in Bethesda, Maryland.
My name is Brielle.
Tiffany Brent from Michigan, Voices of Detroit Initiative.
All right, this table behind me. Oh, do you need a mic? Okay. There you go. It should be on. It should be on.
Hello. I'm Gail Brown, and I'm from the New Hampshire Oral Health Coalition.
I'm Katie Phillips, and I am also here for with the Oral Health Coalition as well.
I'm Lisa Bodwin. I'm with ABLE New Hampshire, from New Hampshire.
Hi, I'm Alan Moss from Oak Street Health in Chicago, currently representing Francis's Minion right now.
Alejandro? Right.
Hello, everyone. I am Alejandra Valencia, Director of the Oral Health Forum in Chicago. And I am just an spectator today. I am part of the Encompass board.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alan Morgan. I'm part of the Encompass board as well, too, and also a spectator.
All right, I think is that everybody in the room? Great. So quickly to our folks on Zoom. Steve, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Steve Geierman. I have one more week at the American Dental Association, and then I will be in a 3-year transition to the Organization for Safety, Asepsis, and Prevention. And I'm a NOHCT member as well. Thank you.
Tony?
Tony Russell from Detroit Community Solutions, and excited part of Encompass Solutions and governance and sustainability in the NOHCT.
Maria?
Hi, my name is Maria Santos. I'm a health and nutrition manager in early childhood. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and very excited to be a part of this today.
Thank you. And Stacy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Chazen. I am a leadership development and technical assistance consultant working to support Open and other Encompass Solutions work.
Great, thank you very much. So obviously we have more than just NOHCT members here, but that's great so that they can see that team in action. So you can tell by the desired outcomes for today, we have a lot of work ahead of us. We do have some breaks interspersed throughout our time, but if you need to do things before then, please do so. We are going to end just as closely as we can at 5 o'clock today. We want to be respectful of your time. Other folks have things that they have plans for in the evening. In terms of the times that are set out for each agenda item, we'll be flexible on those, but we do want to give each of them as much of their allotted time as possible, because this is the agenda that the NOHCT had agreed to, and we don't want to give short shrift to any of that. So, and the last thing, again, when you speak, please make sure you use that microphone so that everyone can hear you. So to get us started in all of this, and I know this is going to be a little bit challenging just because of the spatial setup that we have here. The conversations are going to be close, but we'd like for you to break up into trios or one quad, and and the folks on Zoom will be one of those groups themselves. And our technical folks are going to mute their conversation for us here in the room so they can hear themselves, but it won't, interfere with our discussions. So we want to start on a hopeful note today. And in your trios and quad, you just have to kind of figure out how best that works at your tables there. When coming to today's meeting, what makes you most hopeful about the future of Open? We're in such a huge part or time of change, and it's hopeful. It's good to be hopeful about change. So what is just discussions in your trios about what makes you most hopeful about the future of Open? And we have about, we're going to try to pick up a little bit of time here because we're already behind, but if you can give maybe 5-6 minutes to those discussions, and we'll bring you back together, okay?
Right, so folks on Zoom, I'm pretty sure Josh is going to mute us so that folks in the room can't hear us. Josh, that's right? I think that's the case. Okay.
Yeah, we're probably muted.
Yeah, here we go. He confirmed we're muted in the room. Okay. Wow, the wonders of technology.
Yeah.
We're muted in the room, but not to each other. And I texted Melissa to see, just to make sure she's able to get on. I haven't heard back from her, so hopefully she'll be joining us in a bit.
Great.
Thank you.
So who wants to go first?
I can go first. I'm just happy. I'm hopeful because I think Open is returning to its roots. And at least that's how I'm envisioning my hopefulness, because I want to be able to find and be able to, in my elevator speech, talk about our various goal areas. Now we call them lever areas, whatever they are. And
Stacy Chazen, and the email address is there on the screen. But we did want to get one person from each group to share their highlights, not a kind of a blow-by-blow coverage of what you all talked about, but just some highlights. And if somebody is ready to do that, we can get started. And I'll ask, is there any group that wants to get started to kick us off with just some highlights of your group discussion? And I see Steve's got his hand up. Is there somebody back here? Okay, Julie, and then we'll go to Steve. Oh, yeah, do you need a mic?
Yeah. I can project, but. Okay. Okay.
On the Zoom too.
Okay, so we had the first question, and let me bring this up on my notes here. So we spent a lot of time talking about trust and how we build that trust. And so just some of my notes that and that's coming from kind of CareQuest or DentaQuest kind of starting out, have always been creating our own path, building from the ground up. So it's kind of difficult as we've grown and progressed to kind of pivot and grow with the process. But we have come a long way, and we have to continue to build on what we've accomplished. And so trust and communication is vital, but we also have to be patient and trust that process, and that does take time. We spent a lot of time also talking about the importance of being in this space together and how much you lose when you're on Zoom, when you're virtual, in terms of connecting with one another and kind of what that looks like, again, being present in the space. And so we spent some time talking about that as well. In terms of social boundaries and identities, we talked about really, again, pressing on the issue of of that concept of really needing to be in the room together. And so everything kind of came back to that. And I'm going to ask my group, as I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to ask my group if there's anything that I left out, any high points, because I kind of skimmed over those. Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Steve, you're up. You got it.
And we looked at the first question, and we started off with just the thought that developing trust in the past happened during our convenings with greater familiarity and just trust coming over time. You know, with Zoom, we don't always have that. And the point was made, one way of doing that is for the leaders to be involved in the smaller groups, such as the NRT. And I gave the example when one of our NOHCT work groups was down to Jan, Chris, and Don, I had joined the public perception work group. And I found great joy there. And I've met new people, and we actually do work. And it's been great fun. And it's a way of developing trust and understanding. One of our Zoom colleagues talked about the importance of transparency. And that is an important piece. And though you think that we're at a disadvantage because we're on Zoom, we can have much more intimate conversations. So we're actually doing quite well thus far. So you're not getting ahead of us. We are developing deep trust among ourselves. Another person talked about the importance of being involved at every level. And we characteristically think about the blade. The blade is nice, but it doesn't always reflect full reality. And sometimes we find ourselves, you know, outside of trust. And though sometimes we can talk directly to someone and ask, you know, hey, what's up? We also realize from experience that we're often able, if we just work more with the person that we may perceive they have a difficulty with us, and let natural trust continue to develop. And I personally have seen that happen, and that was a really good thing. The last voice that, or comment that was voiced with us was, we think we're missing within open leadership the voice of the people who we serve. And Don Weaver would realize that we often voice that as the voice of the patient. Patients are one element, but there are many ways of people who we serve and are underserved. And to be able to bring them forward, it's also a learning. And we made the point of, at grassroots level, there are those people who are the recipients of whatever work we do, who are willing to lend their voice. And for them to start it at the grassroots level, and for us to introduce them at the state level and eventually at the open level, that would make a difference. And that also, and we would end by saying, Patrick, in the past, we talked a lot about the importance of onboarding. If we really do decide to bring these folks along, we need to rethink about, what does it mean to help educate people in terms of governance and deep trust around open at all elements of who we are. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Steve. We have two more groups to go. Who's next? Okay, Chris?
So we, I think, used a kind of an iterative process. We started out by talking about what do we mean by trust, and that there's maybe a trust spectrum and we need to figure that out. But then it was really encouraging from one of our newer members who said that she came into this feeling that the members have been vetted by the mere fact that we're on the NOHCT, that we've already demonstrated that a commitment, and so that initiated the trust process, that she had faith in how we had been selected. And that we share an understanding of the goals and the grounding principles and the commitment of the network, and that we respect, we all come from different places, but we share common goals. And so that helps to build it. But then, and then we increase our trust by working together and accomplishing our goals, demonstrating our accountability and commitment by our actions. We talked about how transparency is really key, that we need to acknowledge existing problems and look at what we're doing to address them so we can move forward. And as part of that, that we need to figure out how we work and how decisions get done. And all of those things are part of the trust building process.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. I think Tiffany's gonna take care of this group.
Group 3, what does complex demographic governance look like that leads to equitable processes and outcomes? The discussion in our group centered around NOHCT being a non-traditional governing structure, but maybe struggling to include traditional nodes of governance. NOHCT has leadership tasks, but we're not the leaders. NOHCT has responsibilities, but we're not responsible. But I think that, what we thought that overall we needed to just be certain that we were really looking at the balance of collectively what we bring as a governing structure and the overall goal around equity, and just being much more efficient in our processes, ultimately to get it done. Being realistic and recognizing and appreciating the reality about not being at a space of having the luxury to spend time and energy and infighting over what might be some imperfections in terms of our governing structure and some of the decision-making tools that we're utilizing, but really recognizing that there's groups of polar opposition to our common theme of health equity that we're up against, that we're battling up against. So just being able to recognize that while there are a number of complexities that's going to go into, forging what's the parameters of our governing structure and what needs to occur and what our infrastructure could be, that we do ourselves a disservice by not recognizing the collective strength that we have and the reason that we are, in fact, the NOHCT, so to speak. And just kind of circling back to, I think that the best summarization that Lisa so adequately gave us, just being efficient in the processes and getting it done.
Thank you, Tiffany. And it's one thing I just picked up in listening to the last two groups are the contributions that were highlighted from the new people in here, which is great. Yeah, Paul, yes. And if you could use the mic, please. Thank you.
I just, something clicked when you were talking, Tiffany. I just wondered, could you say a little bit more, the one sentence about there's polar opposition? Could you say a little bit more what you meant by that?
Yes, that there are groups that have polar opposition to what our collective goal is around health equity. Negative, outside of open.
External,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
All right, great. Very good. That was great. All right, we're gonna move along here. Our next segment of the agenda is holding the center, leading from the side. There was some pre-reading on that. I know in your last call back in, I think it was late June, Don Weaver talked about this some with you all, and he's gonna speak to you again about that, and we're gonna have a little bit of time for discussion as well. So Don, I don't know where you want to do it, but you can advance these slides yourself from wherever you're sitting. You can, yeah, you could. And there, oh, yes.
We're all set to go here.
All set?
Promise this will probably be the last time you have to hear me present this. I always ask for somebody else in our group, and they always give it back to me. So here we go. I think, and I think we sort of heard in a summary just a few seconds ago, is we maybe need to get to the point now where we stop worrying about how totally it's defined, but celebrate what we have and move forward. So this is what the question was that we've been asking, certainly in communication and member engagement for some time, and it was, sort of brought to light by one of the speakers we had at one of our gatherings who talked about, holding the center and leading from the side. And I think, the points that have come out of our group, and I think from our discussions, and that was the purpose of summarizing this so we could break into small groups and maybe finish this up once and for all, is how do we make sure that we're all headed toward the North Star, which is the common theme? It's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And how does that connect it to what we do? And how do we make sure that power is shared and that we're really talking about the network driving the actions? I think probably in the last segment that we had, the word that I heard that may be different for a lot of people is governance. I'm not sure we govern. I think we may advise and provide consent in a variety of areas, but if that's governance, so be it. We won't get into the dictionaries for that. But how do we work more efficiently and effectively, avoiding overlap and really expanding opportunities so people don't see what we have as this is the work of a given committee. This is a work of the network, which happens to be a committee, and it's not just composed of individuals from NOHCT. We thought that some of the answers lie in the alignment around our strategic communication and engagement plan, and it really is our, meaning Open's, communication and engagement plan. So these are the themes that you can all see. I'll read them quickly. Build member relationships, promote open resources, increase member participation and ownership, advance awareness and understanding of the work of the network, and strengthen Open's brand and credibility. And that sort of leads to what we have on the right here, a healthy and sustained network that achieves its goals for the oral health system change so that everyone has an equitable chance to thrive. Key takeaways from our group is that we are an advisory board for overall network work, providing high-level thinking. We provide input into annual communication and engagement plan for the network, but we really get that from the entire network, not just any particular committee or NOHCT for that matter. And the team stays informed of the work of the backbone of Encompass Solutions so that we can see if we really are holding the center and getting out of the way so that the leadership comes from the side. I think you sort of heard this echoed in the report outs that were just presented to us, that members of the NOHCT participate in other leadership groups, in the ROCT, in the NRTs, in the levers, to make sure that we have it all covered so that when we do gather and spend our time together, we can reflect what the network is doing. So we're, golly, I guess that's why I get asked this all the time. So we're weavers. I've been that for 70 plus years now. We identify and provide resources and capacity. It's about improving health equity and reducing disparities. I like to say eliminating disparities. Dr. Satcher, when he was our Surgeon General, was challenged by that, and somebody said, "Do we want to reduce?" Or he says, no, we're going for the whole thing. This is about eliminating disparities. Supporting policy efforts, identifying funding opportunities, and facilitate the full NOHCT understanding of the network's work so that we can really promote those stories of impact. This was sort of in the form of a proposal that working groups would be open to the entire network. This is sort of the last hurrah of people saying, is there any problem with that? Our group in particular is going to explore merging with public perception NRT, and maybe that means that just our members participate in that and that we gather in a different way. It seemed from our what we heard in the past that governance and sustainability would like to continue as an independent NOHCT-only group, or should they evolve into something new? That's sort of for them to decide. There had been a discussion about, I thought I'd change this. I tend to frame the positive. Are we doing fine with a 777 structure? And if so, do we need to worry about changing that at this point in time? And really the thought is, if these are the general directions people want to go and we can agree to this, we can start moving forward with the idea that this is what it means to be a NOHCT member, and that's what it means is that we're doing in holding the center and leading from the side. So I guess there's a second or two or three, I don't know, maybe even 39 seconds according to the gentleman to my left here. If you have any specific questions about that before we break into groups, fire ahead.
Yeah, before we get into further into the discussion, like Don said, if there are questions about not the details, but the content of this before we get into discussing how it applies and how we want to move forward with it. So, Paul, did you have a question, or was it someone else?
Could you go back 2 slides? I think it's 2 slides. One before that one there. I don't know if it's a way to help. Maybe I'm just, I don't know, in a different planet. I'm having trouble understanding, seen this before, having trouble looking at this, understanding what is it that you're saying the NOHCT actually does? Because weave, I kind of understand it as a general concept, but I don't understand it in terms of when we come together at a meeting, what does weaving look like? Identifying and provide resources, well, yeah, maybe we might all have some ideas of a particular funding source we might be able to bring, but that doesn't take us having a NOHCT to do that. So all these things to me are things that are good things to do, but they don't take having a NOHCT to do it. So I'm kind of trying to understand what's the purpose of the NOHCT.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came from the simple one-liner of holding the center, leading from the side. And I think holding the center this is about gathering information from throughout the network. I think as we talked about it, there really hasn't been a systematic way of saying, do we have all of the network covered? So that when we get together, we can discuss and say, and share information with each other, things we found out from participating in NRTs and other groups. In the case of sustainability, you guys are doing an amazing job with looking at funding opportunities. It's not that all of us do that, but it's that when we get together to make sure that that's a topic that we discuss. So I think, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're a group of three, so the two of y'all jump in with communication and member engagement. But I think it's really saying systematically making sure that we're looking at all of the leadership hubs across, and then using the time of ours together to either share information so that everybody knows something they can bring back in their sharing with other people, or identify gaps and see if there's something that's needed.
But you're saying that's the reason for having a NOHCT, is for us to share information and maybe have some ideas of things that other people could do.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that came up is that we sort of spend our time straddling in two areas. One of them is sort of doing that, and others is creating projects where some of that work, is already being done by some of the NRTs and done incredibly well. So why don't we spend our time participating in that, opening up whatever we do to the entire network, but using this group as a sort of an advise and consent. How are we doing holding the center, looking at what we said we wanted to get to do? So does that help?
Well, no, I understand what you're saying. It's just that I've been struggling for a while with a different perception, and I could be the only one who has it. I know I'm not, because I talked to other people, but I had thought earlier on that the purpose of the NOHCT had more of a decision-making role, setting directions, and what I've been hearing more recently and what you just said and what's embodied here is we don't have that. It's just a matter of this is a group of people that gets together to share information and maybe suggest things other people could do. And that's a very different concept. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but it's very different than what I was thinking the NOHCT was about. I don't think we've had a full discussion of those two viewpoints or really hashed out, what do people think we should be doing? How does it all relate to the new Encompass board? So I'm just struggling with it, with all that stuff.
If I can, maybe one way to help kind of get more discussion on all of this together, and that might fall into it, is actually the reflect. Could you advance one more, or up to where it says reflect? Two more. One more, sorry. This one. Thank you.
Wow, I mastered this.
Together, we're pretty good at this.
Who says you can't teach an old new tricks?
So the reason I bring up, maybe this is a good way to kind of flesh out what some of these issues are that you want to talk about, is this question. And let me tell you the reason I say this. The question is, imagine it's a year from now and a network member asks you to describe what impact the NOHCT had on open in the past year. What would your ideal answer be? And that's the question. If you could go one more slide, Don, please. I kind of like this exercise because it starts with, in trios, discuss individual responses and draft a common answer. So three different people coming together with one, hopefully, a common answer. And then that trio forms or meets up with a second trio to form a group of 6. And you share your trio answers. And again, the objective is to draft a common answer. And then the last part of the exercise is those groups of 6, which I think will probably have maybe it's just 2, I don't know, but 2 or 3 of them will share with the full group. The reason I'm responding this way is I think it gives everybody an opportunity to participate in what impact should the NOHCT have in the next year. Is that, and plus it moves us along in the agenda. No, I'm seeing a no from Jan. Okay. I'm sorry?
Microphone, please, microphone.
Yep.
I didn't get much of what you just said.
Okay, well, let me repeat it then. Well, Lisa, you said you want to do it differently as well?
Just go to the trios.
Well, that's what we would,
Opposite, which is, can we clarify a little bit more before we?
okay?
Can you put the question?
Yes, sorry. Yes, please.
You really put me
Way to go, Don.
That's the question. No, here.
Oh, you want me to talk? Okay. So I want to go back to what Paul was saying because I have a bit of the same struggle. And I think I can put it in a timeline in my mind, is that originally understanding the NOHCT and that the NOHCT would become a board and that then we became an advisory board. And now I feel like Paul, what is it we do? And that's a question for me. And I feel like some of you, I can do both. I can do the process and I can do activity. So when Don goes through the list and he talks about the things that we do, which I agree with 100%, and then when Pat says, but what do we do? I can only tell you what I think I'm hearing. I'm not saying it's what I think. I'm not saying it's what I propose. It's what I'm hearing is that we have moved from some sort of a governance activity to potentially, or what to me is being described as an ambassador role. And that's at least something I understand. We are probably developing something new that isn't an ambassador role, but that's what I'm hearing. And I guess I want to hear people address that issue. Is that what is in our future? Is that where we want our future to be? I mean, when I say that, then I understand the list from Dawn, which is, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to contact people, I'm going to tell them about what we do. I know how to be an ambassador. Right now, I don't know how to be a NOHCT member. And I just loop back to it. What role is that? And I understand the exercise is designed to help us figure that out, but I just wanted to put that into the conversation.
Thank you, Gail. So I'll suggest it one more time to see if there's any, I mean, that is the exercise that we plan to do. And maybe I flipped it, maybe I got the cart before the horse. What I'm saying is the next part of our agenda that's been agreed to by the working group and the folks that have reviewed this and stuff is to have this exercise where we imagine it's a year from now, someone, a network member asks you to describe what impact the NOHCT had on open in the past year. What would your ideal answer be? That's the exercise, and what I'm saying is perhaps through that exercise, this issue along with others would just kind of organically come up, because I'm assuming that if someone feels like NOHCT needs to have, that you want to have NOHCT be able to say that we did such and such, or we had an involvement in this or whatever, that would be part of the ideal situation that you would be describing to the person. So I'm not trying to skirt it, I'm just trying to say that might be a way for this to kind of, percolate up and have that shared with another group of 3, and then that 6 shared. I think it's a way to have a full discussion while at the same time advancing the agenda that we have on the screen here. Yes, Chris.
So just a clarifying question. What we're asking is not for us to be saying hypothetically today, this is what we've done in the past year, but it's a conjecture or in a year from now, if somebody was to ask us, this is what we would like to be able to say. And so it's not what reality is, but what we would like reality to
That's
be in the
how,
future.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, at least the first word is imagine. I mean, that's how I'm reading the question. I was not at the very beginning of the design of this thing. So if I'm wrong, Stacy, do you want to speak to that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So a year from now, what would you like to be, if someone asked you that question, what would you like to be able to say? What impact did the NOHCT have? And that will reflect, what you did, what role you played. So, so we'll move into that exercise and see what comes of it.
Yes.
So I think,
Jan.
do you
So
have
it's-
assignments? Jan, can we move into the exercise? Or is it a clarifying question about the exercise?
Yeah, Jan, go ahead.
So this is an individual response, yet we're doing it in groups, and then we're expanding the group. Is the 3-person group to come to a consensus of what each one of us wish for in that year? And then that 3 goes with another 3, and the 6 decides on one response?
Pretty much, yes.
It's-
We'll start
that's-
off individually, and then not that one response is going to win out over the others, but how could you combine your responses in some way that reflects what you've all said?
So the goal, I mean, the goal here, folks, is to try to work as a team. And like in any team, different people play a different role, but they're all working towards the same end. And so, yes, the exercise is for individuals in trios, those 3 individuals, bring to that trio what they think the ideal answer would be about what NOHCT did in the past year. And in between those 3 people, there's discussion about it, and hopefully some common answer comes up that is palatable to all of those 3 people. It's probably not going to have, by the time you get through this exercise, it's probably not going to be exactly what one person in the first 3 or first trio discusses. That's the process of trying to build through a team and come to a common, that's the operative word here, a common answer. So as Jan described it, it's, yes, in trios, discuss individual responses and draft a common answer. Then that trio with their common answers links up with another group of 3 to form a group of 6, and they try to reach a common answer. So that's the exercise, and why don't we give it a shot and see where this lands. I'm going to go one more slide just to see. Nope. Okay. So we are at 123, and we're going to spend time on it. I'm just trying to get an idea. This was supposed to conclude at 110, and again, we want to make sure I know that's what I'm thinking too. This was so 25. Let's start with. I'm trying to see your 10. What if we gave 10 minutes to the first trio, because I can tell, and then 10 minutes with the second one. In other words, if you got 10 minutes for the first trio, and then you go to 6 to you form up with the second trio, and you have 10 minutes there. I mean, that's almost the full 25 that we gave to this.
Yeah, Pat, just with the difference.
Yes.
People should just work on their own for the first 2 minutes or so, and then go into the trios.
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. So let's give 3 minutes to the individual response, if that's long enough for you. Then we get together in our first group of trios, and we'll give 7 minutes to that, and then 10 minutes to the group of 6. That's still going to be a total of 20 minutes. Okay? So, and I hate this part of the job, but I'm going to put the timer on here for 3 minutes because we're trying to be respectful of everyone's time.
All right, so folks on the Zoom, what I'd suggest is working individually to start and then maybe go into pairs and then bring your pairs together. So instead of,
Great from the question happening. So you get my gist.
Is it fair to say that also with the communication? So I got communication, funding.
It sounds like we're about to come back.
I think we're being recorded.
The communication also leads into.
How is your name?
Good.
All right, so I know you're still having conversations and they sound like good ones, but we're going to have to close up this section and get each of the groups to share their common answer. Again, the numbers in the room here didn't work out as originally planned, so we're going to end up having 2 groups of 4 here and 1 group of 3, and then we've got the folks on Zoom. And we'll start with the folks on Zoom. Are you guys ready to share your common answer for everyone?
I don't know, guys. Are we ready?
Why don't we let someone else go first this time?
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Paul's group, Paul, Chris, and Jan. You're up.
Yeah, so we talked, what's second on the process, and I'll get to the answer. So the process was, I think, reflective of the conversation we had before we broke up, which was looking at the 2 different imaginations for a year from now. One was we become ambassadors, to use Gail's phrase. We take the ambassador role, and then we've ambassadored during the year. we've informed each other about some things. That's one view. The other view, which I'll take credit or blame for, was that the imagination of us actually taking on a leadership role and actually listening to the network in a deliberate way by going to meetings and gathering data, and then bringing back and making decisions about how the network resources should be used and what kind of activities are most likely to get us to equitable oral health, and actually having a leadership decision-making role. In the conversation moved along towards, it's probably not realistic. It certainly has, the viewpoint of us having a leadership decision-making role has certainly not been what's happening. Given all the things that are going on, it's probably not realistic. The easiest course of action would just be to think of ourselves as the ambassador role, and probably there'd be a lot less frustration from people and a lot less tension in the group if we just go to that role. So that was the conversation we had. Ambassador and connector role.
Ambassador and connector, great. Very good, thank you.
Pat, I'm sorry, I just want to add one more thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So there was, with that's the group consensus.
Yes, okay.
There was some sentiment raised that there is some loss if we take that role, that in fact, if this group doesn't have that leadership decision-making role, who does? Those decisions do get made in some way about what meetings should have, and we have scarce resources, what kind of resources those are, and and how they get spent and what they get spent on. And so the loss would be having a group formed by the network, beholden to the network, responsible and listening to the network. If we don't have that role, then it defaults to the staff, and the staff are all great people, but it doesn't seem like that's a lot of responsibility for them. And so there would be that loss, I think, in that context. But again, it just doesn't seem doable given all the things that are going on. So that's how we came to that decision.
Thank you all. All right, okay, Tiffany's up.
So our group was a 4, Monisha, Lisa, Mike, and myself. And it actually springboard quite well from Paul, you guys' group. We too had common things around the ambassador role. Thank you for that term, Gail. Thank you. It was illuminating.
Gail gets the term award for the day.
But an ambassador role as it relates to communication, but with layers of accountability, whether it's fiscally to the network, making sure that work plan goals are adhered to, being able to discharge appropriate corrective measures in the event that we're not looking at those goals. But really, that ambassador role being embedded in a category that we termed communication, whether that's deepened communication one-on-one outreach. Lisa indicated the power of a telephone call versus, maybe an email or a text message. Another thing categorically that was a thing for us was funding with that lens of equity. Funding, funders, being able to identify spaces where oral health work can be appropriately funded compared to oral health entities looking strictly for funding and perhaps maybe having to pivot or move away from what ultimately are their true goals and intentions. A third category for us was data/work plan. Some concrete things were thrown out. NOHCT increased membership of the network by 35%. NOHCT secured 3 grants for the network. NOHCT achieved a policy win and had an effective plan on how to achieve said win. And then the other thing is another category, it's kind of 4, but it goes back into communication, a snapshot of everything that the network has done, a stat sheet, so to speak. So as we're out or in, working in those ambassador roles, to be able to concretely or succinctly say, this is who we are and this is what we've done in this window of time. So.
Great. Great, thank you. All right, how about the group over here? Okay, great, okay. There you go. You got to go with the numbers, man. The numbers drive it all. All right, so. Oh, great. Okay. Oh, Mike's got the mic coming. Mike's the mic man.
Should have made eye contact. Okay, so I've got a statement here that we created based on our group is me and Sherry and Gail. So the NOHCT has supported the creation of evidence and network viability through data to assist in leading open through strengthening our collective impact. We have supported the network in designing equitable policies based on our clear vision of what access to quality oral health care for all looks like. We have dedicated the time to communicate those policies to policymakers and the communities we ultimately serve. We have strengthened our strategic plan and have supported all network members in implementing that plan. We are ambassadors of the network, and we have prioritized weaving and connecting open in addition to building capacity and facilitating funding opportunities.
Wow. I wish I could write as quickly as you talked that. That was great. Thank you very much. Okay.
So
Christy?
I'm gonna it was Don and I, and Don will add some more to it, but in a year thinking through, the NOHCT has been instrumental in engaging the national oral health space, connecting new and old members through our strategic blueprint, health equity curriculum, NRTs, and work groups. This has resulted in a 25% growth in membership and engagement and led to a number of new programs and financial opportunities and grants, creating avenues of sustainability.
All right. Dr. Geierman, we've given you all as much time as we can. Y'all are next. There he is. All right, the Zoom
No, I'm
group.
not the person talking.
Dr. Russell's
going.
Oh, okay. All right.
Bishop Russell.
All right.
So our group had a very, very interesting discussion. And we addressed the question by saying several things that I think they're pretty much the same thing, but basically that that a year from now, the NOHCT will have, for lack of better terms, work together to bring all of the parts of the network together and to function so that everything is synchronized and that there's a clear path to the visions and the goals, the accomplishments of the network, so that we actually do have measurable outcomes. And I will say, because I'm gonna get in trouble, I don't know with who, but with like full respect to our whole process and honor to those who are a part of it. Many times issues come up in our gatherings, and we have like time limits and processes, and those things don't get addressed, and they just get moved along but not addressed. And so there, hopefully we can come to a real clarity on the power structure of the NOHCT. And if I could, for just a second, attempt to address, because I heard, Encompass and NOHCT, and I don't think there's any conflict of roles between the organizations at all. We know that Encompass is evolving, and the whole organization is in transition. But the kind of the way that I conceptualize it, and I know we could probably go back and forth on this, but if you look at the body, the human body, you have a heart and a brain. And I wanted to say that the NOHCT was the heart, because that's the emotional thing. But really, I think Encompass is more like the heart from a functional standpoint, because the heart distributes resources, blood, cells, etc., energy to the rest of the body. The brain, on the other hand, controls the function and the movement of the body. So I kind of see NOHCT as the brain of the network, and Encompass being more like the heart to distribute the resources. We are providing the staffing and the leadership from that standpoint, the resources, but not necessarily governing the network. That would be, more of the function of the NOHCT in terms of movement, activities, etc. So.
Thank you, Tony. That's great. All right. I think that went well. Believe it or not, your break is coming, not just yet, but we're going to just move into our next segment here that Francis is going to walk us through. Yes.
So Tony said that often things are brought up, discussed, small groups, breakouts, reports, and then we move on to something else without resolution. I'm a little nervous about that having happened just now.
Okay.
That we had a lot of things. There was a bunch of different viewpoints were put on the table, and now we're ready to move on to another subject. Is there some plan for bringing this to? Well, is there a plan for bringing the role of the NOHCT to?
Well, I'll give you my. Steve, you go ahead, and then I'll share my thought.
No,
go ahead.
You share yours first, and then I'd like to respond.
Sure. So I don't know that I don't know that there was we're going to pick this one particular statement, that's it. But I don't know about others, but I heard some consistent themes across each of the groups. One being kind of the ambassador is the path forward, a leadership role. And you all said there might be some loss there, but that the ambassador role was I know you all said the easiest path forward, but that ambassador role was mentioned, I think, in each of the different groups that spoke. And communications, supporting viability through data, strengthening impact. Don and Christie's group talked about the blueprint, NRT. Those are things that the NOHCT helped to bring into being. And the Zoom group, very similar to others. So without going through all the details, my sense was, and then we can hear from Steve and anybody else, but my sense was that there was some commonality, some general agreement in terms of what people said about the way forward. And I don't think we were looking for every I to be dotted or T to be crossed, but to have at least some sense of how this would be looked at a year down the road. Steve?
So Patrick, I appreciate that. I just want to add a bit of clarity to what Tony said, because I think we could make the mistake here of focusing just on NOHCT. I think there are three elements here that we eventually have to bring together. NOHCT is one, Encompass is another, and you know, in the perfect world, as Encompass becomes more and more embedded, it becomes the fundraiser. It's a fundraiser, and it hires and fires. So, but the other piece is the idea of the executive director and the staff. We need to make sure that we're not working in isolation. We need to be making sure that we don't just talk around each other. And we need to have definitive direction. We all know that we are better when we're not just talking generalities, but we're actually talking. Somebody offers us something and we can respond to it. And I think it goes both ways. NOHCT needs to do that with Ife and the staff, and Ife and her staff needs to do that with us. And we're walking down that road. We don't do it well. And I think we need to do better. And that's an elephant in the room for me. So I'm just calling that out because I've heard it in other things before we had this exercise. And it will continue to be there. We can't hold the center and lead from the edge unless we're all walking in the same direction. Thank you.
Well stated, yes. And Cherry wants to, yes, it should be live.
Yeah, I just had a comment. I had to read and reread and rethink the point of this part of the session. And the question on the table was, imagine if someone asked you a year from now what the impact was that NOHCT had on open. Thought that was the assignment. And that we would divide up in groups of threes and kind of come up with a statement, and then we would join another group and kind of wordsmith that. I just kind of thought that's what this was about. And I think it's important that we not mix up so many issues into one assignment. I think that helps with clarity and the purpose. And I tell you the other thing that this assignment did for me, it really, when we read back our statement and had our collective thoughts, it didn't take us very long to come up with how we would respond to somebody in a year. I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit. And I think sometimes we just kind of beat ourselves up, at least I do, and think, whoa, what are we doing? We're not doing nothing. And every time we come together, it looks like we're repeating all over again what we've done. But this helped me so much with clarity about what we've accomplished. And I think we ought to look for the positive piece of this assignment. I just wanted to say that.
All right, yes, Gail, I think that's still Gail, yep.
I agree with what Cherry just said, that it's important to stop and take a look at. This was the assignment, we've created it. But I also have that piece is I have imagined that destination. What I don't know is, are we going to be creating a roadmap to get us there? Are we going to be defining roles and responsibilities of the NOHCT to get us there through a roadmap? And if so, sort of when, not when, I don't need a date, but when are we going to do that? Now, it's clear to me that it's not going to happen today, and I think it's not going to happen in the next 4 days, but I want to make sure it gets on our rolling agenda because we've imagined a wonderful destination. But what is it they say? How do you, I don't know. How do you know where you got it if you don't know where you're going? We need a roadmap.
Well, actually, that kind of feeds into the next section here. Yeah, well, you did a good job with that one, because I don't know that this next section will fully respond to what you said, Gail, but the next section is about digging into priorities and having work plans and talking about strategies and so forth to move the network forward. So I think that was well timed. All right.
I have an answer
Miss-
for Gail.
Yes, Jan.
We get T-shirts that say open ambassadors, and that's our goal. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Hey, my dad always said that, hey, you got to laugh. So we needed one. All right. Thank you for that. And Francis, it is time. Francis is going to talk about digging into our priorities.
Why, thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
And what excellent transitions. I believe a lot of those conversations will be able to be informed. Are you able to hear me better? Yeah, okay. So desired outcomes for this section, which we're actually 5 minutes over when we're supposed to wrap. So fingers crossed we get through what we need to get through. We also have a 20-minute break in here, so I'm just gonna stand in the way of all of your biological functions as we attempt to reach shared agreement about how the NOHCT will reorganize itself in 2022 and potentially beyond. So this is all around task-based work in support of the open blueprint. I did put out 3 handouts that are each of the blueprint levers. So there's 3 of those if you wanted to see the blueprint, and keep that in mind. And we'll also have that for the fundraising discussion that's coming up. So we want to form some initial action plans for moving this task-based work forward in the coming year, and we'll have a shared commitment from all of you NOHCT members for implementing these plans. So it is time for the rubber to meet the road, and we are getting to work. So I know how much you all love process overviews. So here's how we got to where we are. If you recall, back at the end of last year, we had several groups that came together that were facilitated by Encompass staff, including the one and only Kate Schechter, who were able to facilitate these groups to form a network strategy for 2022, which we have then began to refer to as our scope of work or our work plan. And so that was with representative groups of open leadership. So then in Q1 of 22, we vetted and approved this work plan. We broke that out into the decision-making matrix with types of decisions and who would be the entities that are designated to make those decisions. So then we moved on. The communications and member engagement work group, as well as the public perception network response team, helped to design the open communications and engagement strategy that would streamline member experience and our communications plan. And then we recruited 3 facilitators from the NOHCT to lead these ad hoc teams to complete all the activities in the work plan. And so our communications and engagement strategy includes all components of that 2022 work plan. And then in addition, there will be a group for governance and there will be a group for fundraising. And so all of you, except for Gail, who is highlighted in yellow. But, highlighted in yellow. Yeah. Shame. You know, I mean, we're not in the shame or the blame game, but all of you were able to fill out the survey. But so we'll go hub by hub to see how these connections play out. If you recall, each of you were asked to select at least 3 teams. Some of you were ambitious enough to reach up to 10, 11 teams, which I love, but also if we find that that's unrealistic, we want to make sure there's at least one connection to each team, and then we can figure out for final who would be the right people to make sure those connections are made. And I will send this chart around so you all can either add more, subtract, make sure that, like, what's going on with rural? I thought we were like rural, you know? So.
Alan, you got to do some lobbying, Alan.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not, I thought I signed up for it, but
Okay. Take another look. Okay, but just so for a high level, these are all the different connections, and considering how we're intentionally weaving, connecting to each of those groups, making sure that we have the blueprint and all efforts aligned across the network. So find your name, make sure you are making these connections. For the NOHCT, here's how we were playing out with this. Less love for Midwest and South Southeast. And moving into the blueprint levers, you can see how that shakes out. And so we'll start to weave and make sure that introductions are made between the leads of those teams and whoever is staying on those. And so the ad hoc NOHCT work plan teams, those 5 in yellow are specifically what are in the communications and member engagement plan. And then those 2 in green, you see the fundraising efforts, and then governance and infrastructure design. And so each of these ad hoc teams, you can see, will be led by one of the team facilitators. So Rebecca, Tiffany, and Christy, who are the NOHCT facilitators, they will be leading these folks through to reach completion of this work. And so we're gonna spend some time today going directly into this communications and member engagement strategy. And so each of you received an email probably like an hour ago from me that has the link to the worksheet. And so the first tab is a Smarty goal template, and the second tab is all goals, so you can see them side by side. But then each of those strategy areas, these 5 that I will now highlight with this amazing laser pointer. So each of those strategies, it has 4 goals, and then it starts to go into objectives, tactics, owners, measurement standards. So if you all would move into your breakout groups, I know the Zoom room, you guys are staying together, but we are going to start to think through what are the Smarty goals for each of these, each of the goals that we have. So that is specific, measurable, action-oriented, rigorous, time-bound, inclusive, and equitable. So considering each of those factors, here's an example which you've seen many times, but I'll go ahead and bring it up again. So if we were to be smart, we would say that we're building a volunteer team of 100 door-to-door canvassers by May. And to make that Smarty, we would include at least 10 people of color, recruited as volunteer leaders first, so that they can help shape the way we run the canvases. So just considering in all things that we do. So in your groups, you'll review the 4 goals listed under each strategy, and keep in mind in those worksheets, there is a separate tab for each of the strategies, so find your tab, and then start to apply that Smarty framework to finalize plans for the remainder of 2022 and beyond, and considering who will take ownership. So make sure there is a who in that ownership column, I suppose. Yeah, it's a column. And then how are we connecting and weaving and making sure we're collaborating with the other hub teams? And so I'll pause there for any questions before we go and break out. Yes, Chris.
So my version just says comments only.
I'll fix that.
Yes. It says if I want to edit, I have to ask for permission.
I'll update that.
And while she's addressing that, and I guess I'll ask everyone, including Francis, we were going to have a break at 2. Do you want to break now before you get into your group? I mean, you guys have been really working hard through this, so without any objections, let's take our goal. That was originally scheduled for 15. Can we just do 10? Is that all right? 10? Yeah, Jan?
Did you say you had handouts for this part?
Yeah, so there are some printed out, although they are in very small font. And then if we're able to have somebody taking notes, you can even edit the strategy directly. So now you all should have editing privileges. So either handwrite the notes or put them directly in here. If you handwrite them, you can hand them off to me. And then the worksheets are right here for each of those groups. So if you guys wanted to come find those maybe when we're breaking, and I'll go back to what those groups.
And can you put the slide back? Oh, yeah. Okay. So those are the groups. It's 2:13. Why don't we come back at 2:25? That'll be 12 minutes. Is that okay? Hearing no objections, we are in recess until 2:25. 25.
And moving back towards your tables, ever so slowly, but almost certainly, movement is, see, look at Gail. Gail is an example of a leader. Gail follows instructions. Gail gets a gold star.
She's surfing back.
Is anyone looking for the second gold star of the day? Who's it gonna be? Tiffany, I see that look in your eyes. To get up and get back to your seat. Yeah. See what happens when you're so deeply engrossed. So we are going to skip our report out for today, as you all have been taking notes inside of that sheet. So I'll make sure that there's a summary of those for those of you that are heading out the door, so that you're able to review, and we'll advance this work. We'll start to coordinate all of these ad hoc teams so that you guys can come together virtually and begin to complete and map out the implementation plans for this work. And so I will wrap it up there. Did I miss anything?
I think that's it.
I think that's it. And I will, I'll turn it over to Aaron Bouzet from Stars Aligned.
It saves automatically, right?
Yes. And it does save automatically on Google Sheet. And we'll continue on with that. And Aaron, I think you know, but we'll be advancing your slides from here, so just let us know.
Okay, excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As I was introduced, my name is Aaron Bouzet. I'm from Stars Aligned. My counterpart, Ali Starr, and I have been engaged, I think most of you know, with Open for quite some time. And I can firmly say that from the moment that we started our engagement with all of you back in September, we are at a very different place when it comes to fundraising, ensuring a diversified revenue stream for Open. And the purpose of this is to just give an update on where we're at, as well as to identify and bring to this group kind of what we believe are the critical next steps in making sure that Open does have a diversified pipeline to support all of the initiatives moving forward. You can event, there we go. So very quickly, the strategy that we laid out back in September are built upon kind of these four major kind of big buckets. Number one is to take what has been a primary funding scenario that Open had and start to build what would a staffing and a culture of philanthropy look like within inside this wonderful organization. Instill some of the best practices and really organizing principles that would make fundraising success. And then the last two is starting to work internally within the organization and really start to bring the board, NOHCT, and all of its members to the table to identify opportunities, to crystallize what the future of Open and its network looks like, and start to think about the direction and how we want to leverage the outside funding possibilities that exist within the marketplace of funding, albeit individual, corporate, foundational, into the strategic priorities of where Open and its network wants to go and within its next year. So that was really the call to action that we put in place and where we want to be moving forward. So the core elements that we want to kind of talk about is, number one, we worked on figuring out what is the kind of core funding opportunity that Open wants and how does it support its mission. And I will say that I think, you know, it's always the first grant that goes through, and I want to give a hearty applause to Open and Paul and others on getting the first grant out the door. And I think that you know, was the kind of the core movement of where and how an actual funding process, an external funding process, moves through the organization. And so we tackled a lot of complicated issues around how do we leverage its network, how do we leverage its partners in philanthropic processes, and who do we want to bring to the table, both within inside of the organization as well as outside of the organization, to fund its priorities. And so we tackled a lot of complex issues. And I will say that, you know, right where we're at right now is a prime example of where a blank slate and taking its strategic levers and the lever leads in the blueprint strategies that you all have developed, and starting to think about how do we build pipelines that support those particular levers. And so there, if you can envision with me that there is a large amount of philanthropic opportunities that exist out there, from the funding that's coming down from the federal government, there's state funding, there is local and as well as individual funding. But we need to kind of set as a next step the priorities that we want to go for based upon the network and the internal organization. And then how do we structure those things to make sure that we are drawing upon funding priorities to support all of its organizational principles. So an example that we continually talk about is that the state of Michigan has opened up multiple fronts relating to oral health. And so as an organization, we can easily start to pull upon them. But where we have to actually map right now is what are the organizing principles in the network that actually wants to go for these principles and where they want to be in the future. And then how do we match make to all of the philanthropic opportunities, albeit corporate, individual philanthropic, state, and then we match them together and figure out how do we execute them with internal to the organization. And that important step, it requires that our lever leads and our board and others put together clear pipelines on priorities that we want to pursue, objectives that we want to accomplish, mile markers that we want to achieve in a multi-year plan, because then from a philanthropic lens and from an organizational lens, we can go find that funding and start to match it up. It may not all come at once, but in that funding, we can start to assess overhead rates. We can start to assess whether or not they're internal to into the organization or whether or not it supports the network. But we can start to line them up that will advance open and moving into a multi-pronged funding scenario as opposed to one or two. And in that process, none of these happen overnight. And if you think about bringing care to the people, grant that we just submitted, some of these take multi-year relationships to cultivate, to educate upon open, to bring them into the organization so that we can get the funding attached to our long-term strategic partners. So here's where we are at currently. We have a very focused teledentry submission that went out, like I said earlier. Congratulations to Open and to Paul and to others who have helped make this possible. And for those that have signed up to execute this, like I said, 6 Open members are identified in that process. An LOI was submitted to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We know that initially they have a potential maximum amount of funding of around $300,000. And we're actively figuring out how do we supplement that through other foundations that might sign up. And like I said, going through that initial funding process was critical because it identified a lot of questions on how we start to leverage our network. How do we start to leverage our board and the lever leads to get these processes through quick and organized around core principles. There is an open internship program. I'm not sure if other folks like Ife or Stacy want to comment on that and what's going on.
So this was the program that Cherry had been taking the lead on, where we had identified a potential partner at the Florida Institute for Health Innovation. And I believe we're still looking for another partner to step in their stead.
Yes, in the meantime, we've actually posted the internship on the NNPHI website. We've selected one intern that we know that we want to bring on, so hopefully we'll be hiring that person soon as an intern, and we'll be continuing that process Cherry has agreed to serve as the PI on that, so we'll be moving that forward.
Excellent. And Ife, do you want to comment also on the office, application Office of Minority Health?
Oh, yes, excited about this one. We're scuffling to get it done, so if you don't see much of me for the next few days, it's because I'm still working on this proposal. But there is a federal grant out called the Community Driven Approaches to Address Factors Contributing to Structural Racism in Public Health, which sounded just like, wow, that's the open blueprint. So we're putting in a application for that grant, struggling to make the deadline, which is this coming Friday. But we are working on that. We'll be doing it through NNPHI. And there was also another federal grant, which the name of which escapes me right at the moment, but Mike was kind enough to help us locate that comes up in November, that we'll also be looking to see if we can apply for that as well. So we are moving forward with federal grants. NNPHI is a tremendous partner for that because they are already a known quantity with the federal government. And in fact, NNPHI serves as the technical assistance organization for both, I think, of those grants. So they gives us a little bit of a leg up on being able to say that we are viable candidates for that.
Excellent. And the last piece is a consultant was brought on to start to drive and cultivate corporate sponsors, and has done a fantastic job of opening doors, making connections, and starting to move the pipeline in terms of its corporate sponsors, both in the near term and the long term. Excellent. Next slide. Excellent. So, I think, that was a very high level, but a very fast way to walk through, and I want to just very quickly underscore that as Ellie and I and Ife reflect on, the past several months that we've been engaged with all of you and all of the NOHCT meetings that I've been to in the several breakout conversations with the board and others, we are at a completely different place than where we were back in August and September. I do feel that the urgency around identifying multi-funders and a strategic approach of philanthropy has changed. Getting everybody on board of matching the blueprint to where we need to be in the next couple of years. And I do think the critical next steps is start to identify matching the blueprint to the lever leads and saying, where do we want to pursue funding, both in the near term and the long term, either on ideas or actual projects that fit underneath that blueprint and the lever leads that we can start to go out and find specific funding for. In tandem, we are working on continuing to find general funding, general unrestricted funding for Open in its organization, but acting together on identifying that clear strategic plan, both in the near term and the multi-year plan, starts to allow us to figure out what funding is available now, what's coming down on either a federal or state or local level, and actively apply for those, and starting to identify our narrative in each of those different areas. And in that process, we can very quickly start to think about what is our capacity as an organization that we can sustain in some of these multiple funding priorities, and where do we need to start to explicitly seek on either overhead rates or other unrestricted funding to support a both near-term and multi-year process. So in the next, in the breakout groups for the next 12 months, and I'm not sure if Ife or Stacy, you want to go through that, or if there's any questions that folks have of me.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you very much for that, Aaron. It's great to hear the progress that you and open, encompass, not everyone has made in this regard. Just a couple of process notes. We're going to break into groups, but we thought we would take our break again before we put you through that exercise. But before we take the break, anybody have a question or two for Aaron while we have him here? Any questions about what the update that he gave us? No? Anybody on Zoom have a question for Aaron?
No question. I just appreciate the update.
Thank you, Tony. Paul? Oh, okay. Just right after Paul. Good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Aaron, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the plan going forward, the differentiation between the work that you've alluded to. We got in a handout about the work that's going to be done at the Encompass board level versus the work that's going to be done at the network level. You know, network has this sustainability group that's been doing some of the things you've alluded to. So how do you see those two different activities interconnecting, playing out, et cetera?
Good question. I think there's at the network level, there is always a need for us to figure out how we get funding that supports the backbone of the work that you're all doing. And there's two ways that we've discussed this, and I know Paul, you're part of these discussions on how do we get some of that funding either in the indirect way, either through overhead or indirects that we submit to those grants, or whether or not there are specific funding opportunities from individuals or from others that can get us some of those particular funding that opens up access for staffing and support from all of these initiatives. The work from the board level and from the lever leads that I think, in my opinion, are the next steps are identifying our near and long-term funding priorities. And so I know that there's ideas that are in the back of our heads. I think, Paul, you had one in the back of your heads when I first started with all of you fine people. And I think it's getting those lined up and saying, as an organization, based upon the blueprint and the lever leads, what series of funding do we want to start to seek that supports our long-term vision for where this organization is heading, and how do we access the wealth of knowledge as well as bandwidth within the network to get that possible.
Thank you. And Chris, Cherry.
Yeah, so I think it was back one slide regarding the description of the funding opportunities that we're currently looking at, and the one for the Office of Minority Health. I think you mentioned that there's several organizations within Open that's named to be a part of that opportunity. Did I get that right? And if that's so, how did you determine who those organizations would be, or how was that decided?
Now, we saw this as an opportunity to support the work of the blueprint itself. So we have not at this point said that this will be these 6 organizations. The 6 organizations that you saw were for the virtual dental homes. We put out an application for everyone to apply for that. What we're doing with the community-driven approaches is we're saying this is to support the backbone in supporting the work of the blueprint. And then we will have the ability to say, here are the particular aspects of that blueprint that we'll be moving forward. Yes.
All right, thank you, Ife. Any other questions before we take our break? Aaron, thank you very much. We appreciate you. All right, it is, by my watch, 3:35. We're going to take a 10-minute break, so if you can be back by 3:45, and then we'll get into the breakouts to address that question right there. All right, three. Screen there is our next task. We're going to get into trios or quads, again, whatever is most convenient for where you're sitting, or if folks need to maybe combine at another table, however we do it, but again, breaking out into threes or fours. And we have two questions for you. One is, how can the NOHCT members, as a group and individually, advance the strategies in the plan that Aaron just reviewed for us? And the second one is, how can the NOHCT engage other open members in this effort? One of the things we were talking about earlier is ambassadorship and getting more and different members engaged in it. Here's a perfect example of how we can do that. So we're gonna have 10 minutes for this. We're gonna have a very brief report out just to get a little flavor of it in the room. But we also want to get folks, each group, to have a recorder that can write this down and send it to your email notes. You don't have to do them today, but if you can email those notes to Stacy Chazen at that address. So if you can get a recorder and then a reporter in your group. And again, we have 10 minutes for this, and I will kind of give you a 2-minute warning. Okay? You're off. Here, but we're gonna, just a quick reminder, we need someone from each group. If somebody from each group can take your notes and make sure you email those to Stacy so that we have a written record of your group discussions. And then we also need to have someone just do a quick report out. After this session, we have one more, and I think it's probably one that you all want to really do have a full amount of time on. It's on the structure of the NOHCT moving forward and stuff, and I know that's of importance to you. So we're just going to do very quick report outs. If you could just give like a 2-minute highlight of what your group talked about in terms of these two questions. How can the NOHCT members as a group and individually advance the strategies in the plan? And how can NOHCT engage other members in this effort? So just 1 to 2 minutes of each group, and I'm looking for a volunteer. Anybody would like to go first? Anybody? Okay, Rebecca's going to give us started. Oh, here's a mic. Oh, yeah, that's good. That should work. It should be ready to go.
Do I just talk? Is this working? Yes. Okay. So our group, this flowed right from what we were already discussing about network weaving earlier. And so we have, 5 quick things, which are that it would be helpful, I think, for us to be told how we can be most helpful in meeting our fundraising goals. We can also provide, or some of us have contacts we can provide, probably not all of us, regarding potential funders, and we can collaborate around that. We can review grant applications and provide input if that's helpful. And we really think that the NOHCT can be and should be instrumental in the storytelling of what we do, piece of all the grant applications, that's a place that we can be incredibly useful. And then we were having lots and lots of conversations about network weaving, which was what we were working together on in our earlier time. And I think that a lot of that network weaving can help help find funders and possibly even in itself be fundable, but also that just the process of network weaving. Terry was talking about how you go to one conference, you learn about 4 more conferences, and maybe you walk away with 3 grants. So, but you don't ever know where those opportunities are going to come.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Anyone like to go next? Okay, Paul, do you have a mic over there? Okay.
So, well, I'll go quickly over the things that overlap with what Rebecca just said, but it was stuff like members can forward opportunities, write letters of support, tell stories, look for partnerships, organizations that we all belong to that might be interested in partnering with, open for various things, potential funders that might, like Chris gave the example of GlaxoSmithKline funded some activities that ASTD did. And then the last thing we spent actually just about as much time on everything else was how important it would be to have a track record of actually doing some things, taking some projects to fruition. So if you go to a funder and you have some ideas, it's much better if you can talk about what you've done rather than your potential, or you might be able to do something in the future. So maybe there are some things that we could actually begin to do now to take some of the work that's going on, like Tiffany was mentioning. You know, we've got equity documentation and guidelines and stuff like that, but maybe to have a project which wouldn't take funding initially to make sure that that gets used in 10 communities around the country and collect some data about who got it and how it was used and did it make a difference. And so be able to go to funders with some kind of track record is, this is how our distributed network and the value of it, and this is the kind of examples of kind of things we can do, rather than just say, if you give us money, we'll try to then show you that we are capable of doing things, which is always a weaker argument.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Anybody else? I got one group behind me and one on the Zoom, so we're getting to, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Julie, are you going to go, or Lisa?
Okay, so the first question, me and Lisa were talking about the need for having a structure in place for deadlines and having accountability measures in place as this unfolds, and obviously kind of clearly communicating fundraising efforts across the board, because we do have a lot of group and a lot of people involved, and so kind of everyone's staying on the same page with what's happening and who's being engaged, so there's no overlap. Also communicating accomplishments and wins and establishing monthly and quarterly goals, starting off. And then, I also, this kind of brought up some additional questions, and again, these can be rhetorical right now for the sake of time, but how do Encompass Solutions, Stars Aligned, and the NOHCT interact to advance these strategies? How are we working together in this way? Are we essentially serving as a pass-through to all open members to advance the blueprint? And when I say pass-through, I'm guessing through Encompass or NOHCT. So anyways, those are just some thoughts and reflections.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, it's either Zoom, Manisha's got the mic. I think she's ready to go.
Okay.
I think so. No, you've all said a lot of great things, so I'll make this short and sweet. We're looking at more so that first bullet point, just thinking of the staffing model, and thinking that Encompass Solutions should really determine the staffing model, but the NOHCT could support the process by volunteering in the process. That could be whatever grants writing skills that someone may have, or maybe an ideal or thought that they can bring to the table, or like others had said, maybe someone has a connection to a funder that they can bring to the table, like some have done already, and defining the frame for the NOHCT and the network in a way that supports the entire network and the process. And then thinking of, like, we're kind of switching to this philanthropy mindset across the board. So how can we really put that forth across Blaze, across the network of really what we're doing as far as funding, and how that philanthropy mindset shift in letting everybody know, like, if you have a connection, if you have something, to bring that forward to the NOHCT or to the Encompass.
Great. Thank you, Manisha. All right, it's the Zoomers. You guys are up.
Okay. So for the first question, our response is that the action needs to start at the lever teams. So basically, so the NOHCT members NOHCT members will bring the actions down to the lever teams. The lever teams will, explore the actions, discuss what's best, and then the information will kind of flow back so that this way they have the opportunity to share their voice, and everyone has the opportunity to share their ideas. So the next response is that it's a good idea to share to listen to opportunities and share them. So if there are any local opportunities that actually can be turned into a national opportunity, that's a good way of opening the doors to new opportunities for open network. The next one would be that we can include all levers in the NOHCT meeting. So basically what we will consider doing is we will consider inviting them to our meetings and giving them the opportunity to learn what it is that the group does, but also giving them the opportunity to share their ideas, to share their thoughts and any concerns they may have that can be brought to our attention. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Maria, and all the Zoom generation. So before we get on to our last major piece of content for today, one final reminder for the recorders here for these groups. If you can email that information to Stacy, that would be most appreciated. All right, so we are going to move to, we took the break, sorry, to talk about the NOHCT structure for 2023 and beyond, and the desired outcome that we mentioned at the very beginning is a shared agreement on implementing the communication and member engagement proposal. And so I know there's, some of what we talked about earlier in terms of how the NOHCT would work moving forward. This is a way for us to hopefully get some closure on those things. And so we've devoted quite a bit of time to this because we knew that you would, at least we feel like you're going to want to use it there. So before we get into what kind of the questions are, just a kind of a recap of the current structure and processes for NOHCT. And the current size and structure, it's a 21-member group, the 777 for each blade. And for those of you who are kind of new to this, the blade refers to grass tops, people who work at maybe the national level, grass middles, maybe at the state and regional level, and then grassroots, community-based, local-based groups. We want to make sure that the NOHCT has that representation, and it's set up to do that. Right now, you're currently missing 2 grassroots members and 1 grass middle, so just to kind of, you're actually functioning at 18 right now. The selection process in the past has been that open members applied. There was a review group of open members who recommended who to accept, and then the NOHCT voted on that. And that's how we got to the NOHCT that we have now. Vacancies are filled by open solicitation to the network, and then it kind of goes through the same process as the initial members were selected, reviewed by a selection committee, and then a vote of the full NOHCT. And with regard to terms, you all had decided some time ago that 1/3 would roll off every 2 years to keep some fresh ideas and new folks in the process. So if you go along the implementation path of that, that would mean that some could stay as long as 6 years. And that would be in addition to any previous service that you were on this before we kind of formalized the membership terms and that type of thing. The next is, one of the early presentations that we had this morning or earlier this afternoon was Don Weaver talking about the communication and member engagement proposal. And before I kind of quickly summarize this, I think it's important, I think someone else mentioned this earlier in the day, but I think it's important to restate it, is the NOHCT looking at yourself and looking at your structure and so forth. That's going to go on with the entire, as I understand it, and Stacy or Francis, Kate, Ife, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but this same kind of assessment is going to go on throughout the entire network, if I'm not mistaken, through the coming months. And Rebecca Kislek is going to be facilitating that. But we're starting with the NOHCT. And so just a real quick recap of some of the information that Don had presented. Working groups of the NOHCT would be open to the entire network. The communication member engagement group would explore merging with the public perception and NRT as national response team. I'm a former 32-year state employee, and I know what it's like to wrestle with acronyms. So I'm trying to do this for those of you who may still be new with this. The governance and sustainability work group of the NOHCT will continue as an independent NOHCT-only group or evolve into something new. That's still a little bit on the plate. This next one reads NOHCT to move to a 5-5-5 structure. In other words, rather than having 7 members from each blade, it would be 5. But I want to restate what Don said earlier. And correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but you were saying that it's as much as should 777 still be the structure, right? Yeah, okay. And so, you know, the proposal of this work group is to get these questions answered and the new NOHCT in place by the start of 2023. So that was their proposal. That's what came out of some work that they had done. And what we want to do now, and I'll when we get into these groups, I'll put that slide back up so that you have that when in your groups. But what we want to do is get folks into groups and talk about, what do you like about this proposal? How do you think it will improve the effectiveness of NOHCT moving forward? And do you have any remaining questions? Those are the 3 things that we'd like for you to discuss. And I know folks have kind of gotten comfortable in their groups, but other than the Zoomers, I think we ought to mix it up a little bit and do what the planners of the agenda said, which is to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll put the 1s in one group, the 2s in another group, and so on. That way we get at least a little bit of cross-fertilization and cross-thinking in this, because to me, this is a very important activity for you all. So, and we're going to give you, it is 4:18. Let me ask you this. What is your appetite for going a little bit beyond 5 o'clock? Do you have any appetite, or are you full? I want to be respectful of you and your time. I'm hearing full over here. What's that?
Steve has a question.
Okay. Steve, I'll get your question in just a second. I'm hearing full. So we've got 40 minutes to do this, but we really do want to give you all some real time to get into this. And we do want to hear from you. So with that, Steve, your question, sir.
I just wanted to add a bit of clarity. I was one of the 5 NOHCT people that twice reviewed, and Stacy worked with us, reviewed the applicants onto the NOHCT.
Yes.
It was not.
Oh, okay.
It was not arbitrary that we have 18. We did not have sufficient applicants who met at least the criteria of expertise that the 5 of us thought was necessary. So as much as we want to have an in theory 777, 555, the earlier discussion about who is the NOHCT, what are we doing, how are we engaging, that is where the rubber hits the road. So keep in mind,
Yep.
they're not separate conversations. Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, and thank you for the clarification on how we got to 18. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so these are the questions. And I'll be the timekeeper again, but I'm going to go around and we'll do the count off because I do think it's important to get some cross thinking here. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you, and you're a 1.
And, you know, because it's a lot. You
Up
just-
your discussions. I know it's never enough time. I totally get that. But we did want to get some brief report outs from you all. And then we're going to kind of close up here in a little bit. But so I'm going to go, well, I'll ask for volunteers first rather than picking on somebody. But let's start with just, if you can just hit the real highlights. You said you didn't have much of an appetite to go past 5. It is 4:43. So why don't we do 2 minutes? And then we're going to do just a very quick recap. So who wants to go first with just their highlights, 2 minutes worth? We have a taker over here. Okay, Chris Wood is going to start.
Okay, what do we like about the, how do you think this will improve the effectiveness of NOHCT? This was the, can you go back to the bullets, please? There you go. Working groups being open to the entire network. We said that this will increase people's value in their membership, being able to participate. And that it actually will help with organic leadership succession, which I thought was a really good point that I had not thought about before. But that we need to really recruit people with intent so that we continue to have a lot of diversity and different viewpoints and different backgrounds and represented. We said that that will improve network effectiveness because of the membership and leadership recruitment. It will improve the communication between the various groups within the network, and there'll be less isolation, because some people mentioned that they feel that they're not that connected with the rest of the whether it's the ROCs or the lever leads or state groups. In terms of C and ME merging with public perception, this is not something that C and ME is going to tell public perception, but we'd like to ask them if they would be interested in joining forces. And that will avoid duplication. It'll be better use of both members and staff time. In terms of government and sustainability, this is, again, a decision for government and sustainability, but we thought it might be good to keep governance as a NOHCT-only group for now. This is an iterative process. Let's see how things go. But that maybe sustainability should become a separate work group, and that should be open to all. And the reason for that is that in terms of sustainability, we need as much help as we can, and the more people we get involved, perhaps the more opportunities will become evident. In terms of moving to the 5-5-5 structure, we felt that we really don't want to do that. We need to maintain representation from across the country and in terms of diversity in the different levels. Especially, and this frequently happens, if you have a call where maybe 3 or 4 people are missing, then if you only have 15 people and 4 of them are missing, it gives you a very, very small group to have robust discussion. Have I captured everything? Great.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And if we could, that was about 2 minutes, if we could have each group do something similar to that, that does get you answers to these questions. So thank you for that model that you all offered us. Okay,
Group 4.
group 4, over here, Francis, over here.
So
Oh, you've got a mic, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm hope my group will help out. So we kind of thought of things a little bit different, but we went through the list as well. So working groups will be open to the entire network. Kind of the idea was, one of our concerns was, what are our working groups right now? Who, if we're recruiting people from the network into our working groups, what does that actually look like? Especially because if, the CN, are moving to public perception. So what will that look like? What will that look like for the network? What will that look like for the NOHCT? Literally.
What is that?
Karaoke. GNS will continue as an independent. I love that idea. We were sitting here like, yeah, around maybe separating out for sustainability and opening that up. That sounded great. But what will that look like if we're talking NOHCT only? So we really were looking at how do we, if we're recruiting people into these work groups, to get people involved so that we can really intentionally and strategically recruit people into the NOHCT. What do we have to offer? What are we offering right now? Moving to the 5-5 structure, one of the things that I proposed to our group, and they were kind of like, yeah, that makes sense, was for us to stay where we're at right now, not to recruit anyone in, not to look for anyone in particular, because we kind of need to get ourselves together, and that intentionally put on our agenda for accountability, looking at January of 2023, revisiting this. 5-5-5 structure is a smaller structure. 7-7-7. I'm not married to either. I was very clear about that. But I just thinking right now to move to a structure of 5-5-5 is we're not in a place, to me, to make that decision today. That's my opinion. That if we really got ourselves together, and as making all the moves that you're talking here, identifying our work groups, where are we going, looking at our work that we're doing within our levers and all of that within our NRTs, making connections that we've talked about, that by January, that's our accountability to ourselves, that by January, we can revisit this and make it, we know we're gonna have a retreat in January. Make that happen then, have that conversation again. And so that goes to the 2023 piece. And so revisit this in 2023, because making sure that we have that cross diversity everyone is talking about, we are not as diverse as we could be. And so we want to make sure that we withholding, it doesn't matter to me if the structure is 5-5-5 or 7-7-7. We need to be inclusive and diverse as we can get within that structure. And so I know a lot of us are going to be rolling off. And so it's just, well, a third of us will be rolling off. So it's just something to think about for us to target. Anything else?
Thank you, Christy. Okay. Someone else is going to go? Okay, Julie. So this is group 2.
Okay, so we really like the idea of the working groups being open to the entire network, and I'll just echo what Chris said. It is having more people being able to have ownership in the work. I think we all kind of agreed on that too. And so in terms of the CNME, merging with public perception NRT, I think in terms kind of high level, we liked the idea of merging NRTs, because I think